So I was looking at a situation that I feel like is ignored or isn't talked about enough is our housing crisis here in LA County. And because of the pandemic, um, most people know there is still a lot of people who are not back to normal, and it probably won't be. Um, I don't see it ever going back completely to normal. And in terms of the job market, um, people getting like stable incomes, livable wages, there's still the uncertainty of this virus and the variants that are now being introduced to us. Um, there was talk that it was COVID-19 that was the main virus that people were concerned about, but now there's Delta, and then there's talk of Delta Plus, and this other virus that's a variant of COVID-19, which is called Lambda, and there may be others that may become an issue in the near future, unfortunately. And so it has affected a lot of people, and I mean, not just a lot, like millions have been affected. There's been death, there's been job loss, there's been people who are not completely back to the way things were before pre pandemic, um, where people were able to function a little bit better. And so I was looking at the housing, and there's a homeless crisis, an emergency, a homeless crisis that is happening here in the LA County region, and then in parts of LA, it's a little more evident that the crisis is a little more extreme in other areas than others, but it is relatively spread in LA County, the homeless issue. Um, and then you have an issue where there is a moratorium that is in place. It was already set to expire July the 31st. However, they expanded it, um, and now it is going into October the 3rd. And who knows how this will turn out, because I was looking that it's not only renters that are on the fence when it comes to uh, being evicted, but we have an issue once again, like in 2008, foreclosure could be in the works. And what I've noticed is that when there's foreclosure or when there's issues with people being evicted, almost always the people who are on the other end are protected. The banks are protected. The real estate agents, they're making a profit. The banks will make a profit um, in the midst of chaos of a foreclosure, massive foreclosure, and that's what happened in 2008. Um, and it sent a lot of people into a recession. Um, so I was looking at some of the ways that real estate agents are protected and how they play a part in this. And so I happened across an article. Now, real estate agents are supposed to be able to help families get into nice homes and be able to partake in that what is called the American dream. However, that has not been achievable for everyone in the same way. And then if people are able to achieve it, it's maintaining it has been an issue. And more recent now, what we're faced with is possible issues of massive foreclosure, and so that's why the moratoriums also kept in place, because they want to be sure not to go into that era as it once was in 2008. And so it's not just people that are in rental properties, it's also people that are in housing and that could be foreclosed on, and that can have a ripple effect on a lot of people. And so um, Here, in terms of the real estate agents, they profit even in the foreclosure market, and so a number of numbers are staggering. They're stacking up to, is what it's saying. Foreclosures are sweeping across the nation like a fall, cool, and brisk breeze. So national foreclosure activity is up to about 93% from a year ago, and this is according to a Reality Track foreclosure data firm in Irvine, California. So the company also reported recently that the country saw about 1,079 or 179,600 homes in some stage of foreclosure this summer. And so one of every 693 U.S. households. And so most analysts, myself included, the person that was in this article, says that they don't see foreclosures slowing down anytime soon. So, in fact, many predict that they will continue through most of 2008. And so that was back then. So, my main focus of this article is to say that as bad as it was in 2008, that is another thing that they're fearing. And they have not really talked about it as much, but they're fearing that this could repeat, but it'll be 2008 2.0 foreclosures. But in this article, it was basically looking at how the realtors profit off of these bad situations. Unfortunately, they still will make a profit. The banks will make a profit. But as bad as the news may sound, realtors can bring valuable services to the world's foreclosures. And so, I this is a person basically talking on their experience when foreclosures had took place in 2008. So I have a client in Virginia who made 1.3 million last year and spent 200,000 in overhead, clearing more than 1 million working the listing side of foreclosures. So they can make a lot of money on people foreclosing even. And so, I mean, you losing your home, and this is a catastrophic or catastrophe type of situation, but in the end, there's someone still coming up on the winning side, unfortunately, and it's sad, but it's true. And sometimes you wonder if, you know, some people are kind of like not really caring about whether this happens or not, and they're not really for the people, and that's what the big question is. So how can you get in on the game? So these are the people that are trying to get in on this stuff. So it says educate yourself. It's not as simple as saying I'm going to start working in the foreclosure market. So it's very different. A real resale market, and you have to understand the language, the factors that play, and the players. And so, plus, there's a lot of due diligence, plenty of work up front. So, a couple of good places to start is the National Association of Realtors, which has the new consumer brochure called Learn How to Avoid Foreclosure and Keep Your Home. So it covers dangerous mortgages, predatory lending, and the options to foreclosure. And so you visit www.dsnews.com, an online magazine about foreclosure industries. And so pick a side, sellers or buyers. So on the selling side, asset management companies will often pay realtors a flat fee to prepare a broker price opinion. So it's a BPO, so on homes in foreclosure. And so the realtor can get a commission if they end up listing the foreclosed home. And so that's how they can make a profit. That's one of the ways. That they can make a profit off of a home being foreclosed. Um, then Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and what is called the countrywide, for example, will hire realtors to serve as listing agents for real estate owned, which is REO, real estate owned properties. And so the companies set the commissions, which are usually competitive, and they get this The average REO property is selling for about 217,000. This was then, so it might be different now. The average price for the non-REO house is 220,000, not much difference. So on the buyer side, realtors can become a HUD approved broker. Here, realtors work with investors on first time home buyers, and agents can also help investors as third party bidders in auctions. And the realtors buy properties and then they list them. And so agents can find foreclosure properties in the newspaper, the law bulletins, www.publicrecords.com. So develop the right team. So to position themselves for success, realtors need the right people on their team, folks to drive, do research, title work, closings, and listings. And so outside of the office, realtors need to develop relationships with lenders, bankers, and asset manager or management companies. So understanding the big picture now, I want to take the few steps back to see the larger picture here. As a realtor, you're not just buying and selling a selling machine, you're a flesh and blood advocate for the property rights in a great country of ours. And you should see foreclosure for what it really is: someone's abrupt end to what we have known it to be as the true American dream. So it's easy to get lost in all of the numbers, statistics when the housing market takes a dirty turn. But remember, real estate is and always has been about people. So I venture to guess that exactly what you had got in the business, that's what you got into it in the first place, but to help people. And when a foreclosure is looming, people need help. So this is the market where you can make your professionalism shine. So basically, they come out on the winning end either way. Uh, and that's the real truth about it. And banks will be protected as well. So, how banks are protected, and it was the same like in 2008, and now many are protected from eviction. So, it says when banks could restart home foreclosure proceedings, the moratorium is protecting people right now. So, this is bringing it to now. And basically, it says the early as July, but Wells Fargo is waiting until 2022, that is. And so, because of course, Wells Fargo has been under fire for a lot of stuff having to do with foreclosures and things like that, multiple situations. So it's been over a year since lenders and the federal government stepped in to help Americans stay in their homes amid a global health and economic crisis caused by COVID-19 pandemic, and many Americans still need that support. So about 2.1 million homeowners are still in forbearance plans that suspend the mortgage payments according to the Mortgage Bankers Association's latest data. So about 1.8 million families are not in forbearance, but there are already at least 90 days delinquents on paying their mortgage as of April, according to the latest data and from the Black Knight, which are monitors of mortgage data right now. And so for now, many are protected from this eviction through the foreclosure moratorium as well. So there's that put in place on federally backed loans. But those protections are running short on time. So President Joe Biden extended the federal foreclosure moratorium earlier this year, but that will expire June the 30th. So many of the foreclosure programs and the federally backed loans are set to lapse this fall. So in a hearing Wednesday, senators asked the CEOs of several major banks about what they plan to do to help Americans that are caught up in the situation. So here's what the heads of the Banks of America and Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo have said. So Wells Fargo plans to extend their foreclosure protections beyond the current federal moratorium. For the loans that we own, we have extended our moratoriums for foreclosure and evictions until the end of the year. And so CEO Charles Scharf said in a hearing on Wednesday on CNBC when they make it follow up with the bank. A spokesperson of Wells Fargo reiterated that except in very specific cases, the bank has stopped all foreclosures related activity on occupied properties through the end of 2021 and has halted all evictions through the end of the year. Okay, so that is also a buffer. Additionally, Wells Fargo supports Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and so that is mentioned, which is a proposed rule that would prevent lenders from starting foreclosure proceedings until 2022. So we support the CFPB's effort, which is Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's effort to make this apply for the whole industry, but we are not waiting for them to make this decision where we service mortgages for ourselves, the spokesperson said. So, Bank of America, their CEO Brian Monahan, said that the hearing that the bank suspension for all foreclosures would run through the end of the quarter, which ends June 30. And so he added that a number of Bank of America customers who are still in forbearance, potentially at risk of falling delinquent is down to about 90%. And so the good news is the amount of deferrals is way down, and most of the clients have become current. So Monahan said, irrespective of the deadline passing, we'll continue to work with a few clients. And so we have left to help them. So a spokesperson of Bank of America said on Wednesday that Monahan was referring to the June 30 moratorium deadline and said the policy applied to both bank-owned loans as well as the government-backed loans and the bank services. So J.P. Morgan and Chase, they basically the CEO, which is Jaime or Damon, did not comment on when Chase planned to resume foreclosures and evictions during the hearing, but said that about 90% of the Chase customers has also exited forbearance programs. So Damon's written testimony specified that the bank has extended forbearance options to about 2 million mortgage, auto, and credit card accounts since the start of the pandemic. So the Chase spokesperson said in an email to CNBC that make it that the credit card relief accounts for a little more than about 2 million customers impacted, that the difference is split almost equally between home lending forbearance and auto relief as well. So auto car loans is an issue as well. A lot of people don't think about that, but there are people who owe on their car, they don't own it, and they have a loan on that, and that is affected as well through this pandemic. So on the mortgage foreclosure moratorium, Chase spokesperson said that the bank is continuing to align with the various state and federal foreclosure moratorium deadlines for all loans in its portfolio. So the federal level, that deadline is currently set for June 30. Okay, and so that was of course at that moment. And so Chase declined to comment on whether the bank supported the CFPB's proposed rule banning foreclosure proceedings until 2022. And so we have yet to see how all of this is going to play out, because every bank is not going to follow suit with every single other bank. So Morgan Stanley CEO James Gorman said that his financial institution does not operate in consumer mortgages. So CEO Citibank Jane Fraser and Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon were not addressed. And so you have to really pay attention to what's going on, because it affects so many millions of people, and it can have a ripple effect on how things turn out and play out for a lot of people. So how to buy foreclosed homes from banks and why they are so They basically talk about people who that's what they spend their time doing is buying foreclosures, and somebody is somehow is coming out on the winning end of somebody's um, broken American dream, which is sad to say, but it's true. And so right now, everything is hanging in the balance. Things have been expanded in terms of the moratorium up until October the 3rd, but there's fighting going on right now, arguing back and forth. There's lawsuits that are pending because of the extension of the moratorium. But the reason why it was extended is because of what we have going on with the Delta surge that is happening in LA County, and it's happening outside of LA County as well. So that's the reason why. That's one of the main reasons. But that's not sitting too well with rental companies, who, from what I've seen, with rental companies, a lot of times they will take a place even before this crisis was happening with the COVID. There was the livable wage. People complaining about jobs weren't really paying as much, which that is true. The pay hasn't gone up, but the rents have gone up in a lot of these places here in LA County. So some people have even tried to move to cheaper areas in hopes that maybe that is able to be stable for them, place to stay and work, and not have to worry about so much of the high rents. But however, when you're living in a rental, it goes up every year, it increases, and then sometimes when you move to a place where the rent is low, the income might be even lower where you move to. I've heard that happen where people will think, oh, that's what attracts them is the low cost in rents, but you gotta wonder where else is there gonna be a catch to all of this, and then when you move, you wind up finding out that jobs are not as, they're not as plentiful. There's not as much going on in the job market in those areas. Are you having to commute to the area where you once lived, in the metropolitan areas, and make the money there to compensate for not having found jobs in the areas where the rent is a little cheaper. And so it puts you in a situation either way it goes. And so that's what people have been faced with. Also, knowing that the rental companies, they can take an apartment, and when you first moved in there, maybe it was like 1,000. Now they can take that apartment, and if you move out, they can get market rate rent, a higher rent, or they can charge more. And most times that's what some companies will do. They want to move people out. I even heard that they can move their relatives in. Um, and there's really nothing you can do about it. And I've heard that. I know some people are unaware of that. There's some smaller landlords that may even try to um, go to that extreme to move their relatives in and move you out. So even if you've been there for like a decade or more, and you're paying a low rent, they want that market rate rent. They may even try to use that as an excuse to get you out so that they can get the market rent, a higher rent. And I know that happened a lot in the USC area where people, residents, families were being displaced simply because they could get more income from USC students that stay for a short stay, because some of those students, their family members are helping them pay for their stay while they're attending the college, and a lot of that area is being turned into student housing, and they would make more money off of student housing than they would families living in the area. And so a lot of the streets were being changed, bike lanes put in, more lighting put in, more accommodations for students of USC, and so that was something that was going on over there. You need to pay close attention to, and also you can see the dynamics of downtown LA changing, where they're using the fact that they have, they already have like developers that have a plan or a blueprint, and they'll already propose different ways to transform an area and, put in condos, put in lofts, put in luxury dwellings, and which once were places where there were just families on maybe limited or fixed income, and then they move those families. Those families end up getting displaced because they changed the whole scheme of things, and it's more for profit rather than families. And so that's what a lot of this is. That is, it's part of the gentrification uh, of what has gone on. You see the face of neighborhoods that once were family oriented neighborhoods that are now changing to like areas of people that have like higher incomes or wealth or more wealth. And maybe they're not even intending on staying for long periods of time. They're there and they're there for a shorter period of time, but they're paying a lot more money for those lofts and luxury condos. And so that's what ends up happening. And, they'll change the fixtures, they'll change the scene. And then now you have this living where people will live in places because of the amenities, is what is more a factor. Can you have more than one pet? Can you have large pets? Can you have a swimming pool, a racquetball, a gym? That's the way downtown living is, and it's seems like it's for the higher income earners or upscale income earners, where they're able to have not only the luxury condo or loft, but they also have a game room, they have a TV room, they have racquetball, tennis, a gym, sauna, maybe somebody could come. There's a masseuse, that a room for specifically that, and so some of those places are set up for that kind of living, and so that's the way some people desire to live, and that then you're going to pay a pretty price for it, and so you're being charged the money for not only the place that you're living in, but all of the amenities that are included. And also, yeah, last, but not least, you have the laundry room that is right there. You're not having to go out and go to a laundromat, but the laundry room is there, and then you also have maybe more than one parking stall. You'll have two, parking, or maybe three, or your own garage. And so a lot of these places are being set up like that, and so you're going to pay for it. Um, and so now I've also seen where houses are being used as rentals. And that is something that was happening. I noticed a lot in the South that they were starting to do that, and where you don't own the home, but you can live in a home as if and have that homeowner's experience without having the mortgage. Some people live like that, where they live in a house and they have a front and backyard, but they don't own the house. They just occupy that house, and they call that keeping the houses hostage, held hostage, so that families can actually partake in home ownership. Um, and so the American dream is becoming a lot of more of a yesteryear, yester days type of theme, and now you have this high quality living, but only at the expense of people who have high incomes, and that's also what has contributed to a lot of people having to be displaced or move, and also possibly becoming homeless because they can't afford those living situations, and then maybe their rent is increased unfairly. I've heard of some situations where people's rent has been increased a lot more. There's no rent controls in some area, and so that kind of puts people in a vicarious situation. So I'm gonna let this go, but those are some of the issues that go along with all of this. There's two sides to every story, and so some see this as a money venture. It's not about people's lives and families, and others they see it where they might be protected and they can profit off of foreclosure, but then they realize the impact that the ripple effect it causes on a lot of families and a lot of people who maybe this was no fault of their own. And the pandemic has surely exacerbated these issues, and so that I think is what is looming, and that's what people fail to see oftentimes. That it's not only the renters that you're looking at having to, wait until things get a little bit more stable, but it's also the people who are in homes could lose their homes. Maybe they had jobs and the jobs closed down for various reasons due to the virus surge um, from earlier in 2020, and now it's repeating itself again. And so it's affected people in so many ways that you wouldn't even believe. But this seems like it's a domino effect. If the renters are affected, then very well the homeowners somehow they're in there, they're going to be affected as well. Then you have all these companies. It seems like people feel as though that they're coming out on the better end. There's always somebody on the other end that can profit off of unfortunate demise of people losing homes, but it comes with a high price, and then it also affects so many people that it can affect a lot of people in a damaging way, and it can cause a recession to happen even more so all over again. I feel like we haven't really gotten out of the one from before. We kind of bounced back a little bit, but this surely will send a lot of people back. I already see the signs of it, and you know, it's not unusual to see people that are in homes all their lives, and then all of a sudden, they're no longer able to secure that home, and then they have to move all their belongings, even though they probably paid a significant amount in mortgage payments when things were you know, a little more normalcy before this pandemic. But, sometimes people are one paycheck or maybe two paychecks away from these issues. And people are unaware, that they're not, that maybe they don't have enough residual income to hold off for the storm. And so they always warn of this things, the what ifs. Some people don't want to think about it, but you have to think about the what ifs because we are in the what if right now stage. What if you lose your home? What if, you have to do this? What if you have to live with family members? What if you have to file bankruptcy? And so some people are really thinking about these things right now. And so I don't know that the news really talks about, a lot of times it may not just be them, but I think that they don't want to, toot the horn of doom on the housing market, but I kind of feel like it's like looming. Like not everybody is in the non-delinquent stage and trying to bounce back. Maybe some people are trying to bounce back, but it's harder, especially when you are not really sure and there's so much uncertainty because sometimes the structure of these businesses has to change with the virus protocols, and so you might not can have the same number of people that you used to have in your business. There has to be less numbers of people's that come in. You have to change your business where people are eating outside, or you have to do work from home. There's a lot of things that end up changing the way these businesses used to operate. They're not really operating in their full capacity. And even now, the schools supposed to start August the 16th here in LA County, but some parents are still saying that they might not send their kids back to school because they're afraid their kids could come in contact when they start going into these rooms around all these kids. They could get in contact with this virus or maybe something worse because they're starting to see kids ending up in the hospital. And so all of this seems to have a domino effect on how people's living situation is going to play out. And so we could only wonder how this is going to end up by the end of the year. Hopefully, especially after October 3rd, when if they do um, end the moratorium, we shall see. We shall see how it ends up, how this plays out, and then you have all these lawsuits that are pending. So I'm wondering how that's going to turn out because there's a lot of people who weren't happy with the extension to October 3rd. Some still in court trying to fight to end it. Um, Even though it's not that long, it's not as long as it has been, but I guess it's gone on long enough for some people. So having said that, I'm going to let this go. Thanks for listening.